friends, it's Silvia. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do a VR and it's called Let's Be Tarot Friends, and it's a VR to Tarot is Magic. So we're going to talk about my experience with tarot, but don't worry, there's going to be plenty of decks. I got plenty of decks here on my side for me to visually explain what I mean by answering these prompts. So let's start. What type of art are you looking for in a deck? I would say that I love especially modern takes on the RWS. And what I mean by modern, sometimes it could be even a collage deck, but also hand-drawn. It could be, well, you guys know that I really love Anatolian style. That is not necessarily a modern take on the RWS. As a matter of fact, I think that her most beautiful decks are the ones that have some kind of a reminiscence of the art style of the Baroque or the Renaissance. If you think about the Tarot Arthurian, for example, that is really, really beautiful. But also the Burnstone and Earthflesh Tarot is a fantastic deck. But because I wanted to show you something, so a modern take on the RWS. For me, the deck that most represents this is the Savvy Soul Tarot by Julie Whitelish. This is an amazing deck that I backed as a Kickstarter campaign. Now it will be probably 2-3 years ago. I honestly don't remember. And it has been one of the decks that I've used the most in these years. This is fantastic. I absolutely love it. I love everything about it. I love the fact that, for example, the characters on the cards are gray, and that is actually done on purpose. And the intention behind that is that Julie was explaining in the guidebook that she wants us as tarot readers or tarot collectors to, let's say, metaphorically color the characters, give them those shades that we like. This is definitely a modern take on the RWS, and it is my preferred way to reproduce an RWS. The symbology is not necessarily the same as the RWS, but the symbols are there, and the meaning of the cards is pretty straightforward, I would say. It is very innovative, and it's a deck that reads really, really well. And so I'm guessing when I talk about what type of art I look for, I also look forward to a type of art style that makes it easy for me to connect with the deck. Then what do you search for in a deck? I think I answered that question already. So for me, the most important thing is a bond, a connection, something that will make me go, this deck is unique, this deck is amazing, I really love it, and I want to work with it because of the art style that has been used. What deck are you most intrigued by right now and why? And it has to be this one. Oh my goodness, do you guys know this deck? This deck is fantastic. I had no idea, and it doesn't look, I think it's very underrated. Even the way in which it has been presented, or what you can read on Amazon, the listing, for example, when you look for this deck. This is a Liminal 11 publication, so it can be purchased on Amazon and your local metaphysical bookstore or a chain bookstore, you name it. But this deck, I believe it has been underrated because it doesn't explain how incredibly cool the concept behind, I would say not all of the cards, but most of the cards are. And don't worry, I will also be filming a walkthrough of this deck soon. But let me just show you one card, because when I was filming the first impression of this card, it was literally on camera that I discovered something about this card, and it is in the video now. So let me just show you. Okay, there's a light there and it's not very nice, but okay, I use this. Okay, here. So as you can see here on the side of the card here, there's a sliver. And this sliver shows a person and also cables, as you can see. And also if you look here at the bottom of the card, there's a T. Now this one is it looks, you know, when you look at it the first time, it looks almost as if it were just a depiction of the landing on the moon and someone taking the first steps on the moon. And actually when you realize this part on the card, and you see that other person, it looks more like it's revealing itself to be a movie set. So they're actually filming. So you will also understand now this T on the floor here. This is the scotch tape that you use, or the tape that you use for the main characters, the one is on camera at the moment, to know, for them to know where to stand. And this is just amazing, because to me it gives me the idea that there is the skills of reproducing something that is so close to reality. And I don't think that this deck with this card is denying that man has indeed landed on the moon, but I think that it is explaining that the resources and the skills of the magician are very much something that it is real, but at the same time is also magical. And all of these cards, there's a number of cards that have these little gems that can be discovered. When you look at the cards, when you look deeper at the cards and the meaning, and you find yourself wondering what was the intention behind this. So as you can see here, for example, this is the Lovers card, and it shows, I believe, what we can tell as a matter of the passing of time. So these two characters, they meet, as you can see in the square in the middle. They probably met in a subway somewhere, and then the passing of times, they just bonded, and now they become the Lovers card. So it is really beautiful. There's a number of things that are really interesting. The Hermit card, which is showing in the middle, in the frame in the middle, is showing the more classical idea of the hermit, but it's still depicted in an environment where there is a crowd, and you can understand how the feeling of loneliness can still pervade you even if you are surrounded by the crowd. And there's a number of cards, as I said, that are really, really interesting. This is the Hanged One, for example, but if you look closely, you will see in the middle, within the frame, there's a magician that has been locked and tied down to a really heavy rock, and is thrown in the middle of the sea, and they have to liberate themselves, free themselves from those locks, and then swim to the surface. So there is always that sense of reminding you of the meaning of the card, but at the same time it does present the cards in a slightly different way that is really, I believe, thought-provoking. So this is a deck that is definitely intriguing me these days, and I, as promised, I will film a walkthrough, but it's also a deck that I'm really looking forward to use for myself, because I want to see what my experience is going to be with a deck that is so interesting. Then, is there a card in a deck you always check out first, and why? Definitely. And in that case is the three, well, there's more than one card. I would say my favorite card is probably the Star card. I am an Aquarius, so today is actually, at the day of posting, is actually my birthday, 17th of February. So I'm always checking out the Star card. But another card that I always try and check out if I can is the Three of Swords. And the reason why I do that is because I think that the usual depiction of a heart that has been pierced by three swords is rather lazy. It's not something that it's probably an opinion that is not very common, because you will see people just generally accepting the Three of Swords as the pierced heart, and that's fine. I'm not saying that I will not buy a deck if I don't see an alternative card to that. But whenever a deck is actually going to the effort of showing me an alternative to that, so something that I'm trying to find, this obviously here on the Tarot of the Abyss, which is another tarot deck by Anatolian. So you will see that in this deck, you have been given the possibility to choose whether you want to go the classical way, so having the heart that is being pierced, or if you want, you can actually switch to the alternative, which I'm desperately trying to find, because as we all know, for Murphy's Law, whenever we're trying to find a specific card in a deck, it turns out that it's actually at the end of the deck. So I should probably check the end of a deck, but generally speaking, when I do that, I cannot find it because it's not at the end. Oh, okay, I finally found it. So this is the Three of Swords as the alternative card. And as you can see, it's really it's got a very interesting concept. So as you can see here, it's a person that is opening a book, and you still have the three swords of that person in the book and not the heart of the person. But because of that, there's a number of letters. I don't know if you can tell, but there's a number of letters that come out of the book, and in the motion, the transaction from flying out of the book and into the mind of the person, that actually transforms into birds. So it is really interesting. It's an alternative card. This deck, for example, also has an alternative Ten of Swords, which goes to show how important numerology is for Anna, and the way in which she has represented this deck, at least. Obviously, though, you still have the classical way to represent both the Three of Swords and the Ten of Swords, with the Ten Swords, stabbing a person on the back. So if you want, you can still read it that way. But I love the fact that we have been given the possibility to actually change our perspective on those two cards. If there is one card in a deck you really don't like, would you want to miss out on it? Yes. I don't take it out. I would never do that, because obviously all of the readings will be askew, so you don't want that. But I have to be honest, yeah, of course, there might be cards in a deck in specific that I don't like. And I will go as far as to say this: if there's more than one, if there's 2, 3, 4 cards in a deck that I really don't like, that I have a really adverse reaction to, I will not buy the deck. It hasn't happened very often. There's a couple of decks that I'm not going to say, because I know that one of them is actually very much beloved by everyone. And I understand that, because it is really interesting. In particularly, it's got a very interesting set of peepish minors, but interesting one, not lazy ones. But there's a couple of cards in there that I just really cannot. I know myself, and I know that when I pull them, doing a reading, I will be thrown off by those cards, and I just don't want it to happen, because I read for clients, and obviously I have to stay, I have to preserve this connection with the deck. So what is your favorite or least favorite card in tarot, and why? So as I was saying earlier, my favorite is most likely the Star card, and the least favorite for me is the Five of Swords, simply because the situation depicted in the Five of Swords is absolutely horrible. It speaks about an unfair advantage. It speaks about a situation in which you cannot win no matter what. You find yourself under certain circumstances where there's a lot of talking behind your back, and there's something, the wheels are in motion, and you have absolutely no chance of winning. And that is really unfair to me. And as a matter of fact, this kind of trope is also something that puts me off watching a movie. If I know that in the movie, for example, there's going to be someone that is going to be accused of something, and they're completely innocent, it gives me a lot of anxiety, and so I will actually not even watch that movie. So what do people close to you feel about tarot and you doing tarot? Not everyone knows. Okay, that may sound a bit odd. Of course, my husband knows, my closest friends know. I do have really close friends also in the tarot community. But if you, let's say, there's a number of people that are close to me, not in the tarot community, that have no idea. I don't feel like I should be hiding this. It's just that I personally don't think that these specific people that don't know have the sensibility to understand what tarot is about. And for me, it's about building this meaningful connection in the community. But they would see it as something really dark or much darker. And I just don't want to have this conversation, or at least I'm not necessarily ready to have this conversation now. Then moving on, how do you feel about the esoteric stuff in tarot? I'm all for it. Look, honestly, I'm always interested in adding new layers of interpretation to the cards to a certain point. So let me just explain that. What I do not understand, or rather I understand if I study, but I disagree with, is trying and spinning the narrative to fit into a certain set or a certain discipline. Tarot was not born out of astrology. Of course, there are references out of astrology that you can combine with tarot, but tarot was not a product out of astrology. The minors do not reflect astrological influences. If we want to find these astrological influences, absolutely, let's go for it. Especially because it could be interesting, it could be interesting to give, to set up on a different perspective on reading tarot. But if you ask me, I'm a bit more of a purist when it comes to the meaning of the cards, rather than, let's say, I'm more of a purist for the meaning of the cards rather than the art style or the symbology, if that makes sense. I hope it makes sense. So I would rather not. Sometimes I read books. I read a lot of books about tarot and divination in general. Sometimes I will read a book and I would just shake my head because it really feels like the author really wants to convince me that this particular card in tarot needs to be read in a certain way because of the Picatrix has been described this way, or there's a particular astrological influence, or there's a Kabbalah influence, and so on and so forth. Even though I can see it the other way around, I can see these influences, I still believe that tarot should be the primary source of my reading, of my knowledge, and then I can build up on top of that. I don't know, as I said, I don't know if it makes sense. I hope it does. IWS thought or must say and why? I would say I read with all the three systems. I read with more than those three systems. In Italy, we have a number of different divination cards. We have the Sibilla, but I also read Lenormand. I also read Kipper. And as a matter of fact, when I started reading, my very first deck wasn't even an IWS. It was a bit of a hybrid between, let's say, reading plain cards and an IWS. So it had the majors, it's called Tarocco Indovino. And the majors were based on what we usually think of the majors, and the minors are completely different. But it goes to show that there is a basis of numerology in tarot as well, that deck as well, let's say, the Tarocco Indovino. What are your thoughts on cardstock? And I do have an example. This is by far my favorite cardstock of all time, and this is the Yokai Yochi Tarot. How should I describe this cardstock? So this is linen. It's a very soft linen, very soft the touch, to the point that it feels almost papery. If you do have the Yokai Yochi Tarot, you will understand what I'm talking about. This is a linen that with time, the more you use this deck, the more it will be, it will smoothen out, and so it feels more and more after so many times I've been using this deck, it feels less like linen, more like matte cardstock, papery kind of cardstock. And this is by far my favorite. However, I have to say, I know that this is probably also the most expensive one. And so in order for us to have the possibility to buy more decks and to have variety, I also understand that tarot creators don't necessarily go for the most expensive option, and that is totally fine. So if I had to tell you my second favorite, I would say a papery, cardboardy kind of cardstock, but sturdy enough that it doesn't feel like it will rip apart the cards the first time you use them. And one of the examples, my favorite examples, would be the Amber Nora Tarot, the Awakened edition, or also the original edition, because when you rub the cards together, you will hear a very distinctive kind of noise, and that is absolutely fantastic. So that to me is my favorite, because it not only gives me an excellent experience from a tactile point of view, but also from an auditory point of view. So that one would be my second favorite, my second best. Then bags or boxes, I mean, when I can, bags. And I would just have to say, I just received as a birthday present this and other things from the Tarot Bag Ladies, who I highly recommend. I mean, look at this bag. This is custom made. Obviously, you can choose a different size. And I absolutely adore it. Just brace yourself, because voila, I mean, it's got bees in the inside lining as well. How cute is this? apart from the fact that I absolutely love these colors, the yellow of the background, the bees that are in black and white, and also obviously here. But this is really, really a joy to look at. It's really beautiful. So when I can, bags, but obviously bags cost additional money, because when you buy a tarot deck, it will come in a tuck box or a two-part box or whatever other type of box it will come in. And then obviously you have to, if you want to store it in a bag, you will have to purchase the bag aside. So obviously that is an additional expense. So when I can, tarot bags. If I cannot, then I'm happy with the boxes. How did you learn tarot or get into it? So this is interesting because I talked about it the first time when I was having a chat with Benny from the Fool's Apprentice. So I learned very young. My auntie was into divination. She was actually not just into divination, but she would have called a healer in the community. There were literally people coming to her at all times to ask for remedies, to ask for a good word, to ask for advice, to ask also for divination. So her main tool for divination would have been bone throwing. And so I literally grew up with my auntie, just for pretty much for anything, really. Just throwing the bones and just deciding on what to do. And but she will be so close to nature that she will be able to create a syncretism between the wisdom of tradition in Italy. So I was born in Italy. My auntie was Italian. I'm Italian as well. And she was creating this association between the wisdom that comes from millennia of traditions and also that kind of magical divination. So she would know, for example, what to expect weather-wise the day after just by looking at the movement of the birds in the sky, or the clouds going towards the mountains, and that would mean that it was going to rain, or if the clouds were going towards the sea, then that would mean that you could go out and work because it would be a sunny day. So there were a number of things, and many of them, as I said, were based on tradition, but many others were based on her own knowledge. And I honestly don't even know whether she got this knowledge from her own mother, possibly. I don't know, because I never met my grandma. But so when I started doing or approaching divination, my approach was mostly based on bone throwing, charm casting. That was something that we did also to have fun, because imagine you have your niece, was 6, 7, 8 years old, and also to do something fun, to teach her about how to recognize the symbol in the charms, for example, and the keywords associated with them. So it was something that it was in a very positive environment, I would say, in a very positive atmosphere, a very safe space for me. I never felt like what we were talking about was something that was taboo, or I never felt like there was a bit of a stigma. The stigma came later because obviously I realized that not everyone is as understanding as my auntie was. And so obviously when I was facing the rest of the world with my own divination and my own reading the tarot and playing cards, for example, I was seeing the reaction from people, and that unfortunately taught me how to be more private about this. But that was my tarot origin story. Best news in tarot world you heard lately? It's more than one. I'm just absolutely stoked by the amount of decks that have been released originally as independent decks, and now they're being picked up mass market. It used to be your 3 or 4, your usual Chris and Donnelly, for example, or MJ Cullinane, that were always the ones that have been picked out of the many creators. But now it feels like publishing companies have realized that there's actually a lot of interest from the tarot community into these decks. And I'm referring, for example, to even Rockpool. So Rockpool is Australian, and Rockpool was always very famous for releasing oracle decks. But lately, for example, they picked up the Lumina Tarot, which was absolutely incredible. They picked up the Black Violet Tarot. They picked up the Magician, Martyrs, and Madman Tarot. So I'm stoked that this means that we will give the possibility to more people to get into tarot, because all of a sudden you will have decks like, for example, let's say this one, if the Saviso will ever be picked up mass market, this deck is really sought after. It's an indie deck. Unfortunately, Julie never agreed to do a reprint. So there's people literally asking for $500-600 for a deck like this. If one day it gets picked up mass market, then of course, all of us who could not necessarily or don't necessarily want to spend $500-600 on a tarot deck will be able to source these decks because of the mass market publishing. Obviously, there's the other side of the coin. There's a number of reasons why perhaps a creator doesn't want to go the mass market way, and I completely understand. But for us as tarot collectors, it's actually good news. How many decks are on your to-get list? I don't know. I have to say that I do have a wish list. I don't know whether to-get list and wish list are seen in a different way. So my wish list is, I would love to add that deck. My to-get list is everything related to my content. So obviously being a tarot tuber and also being, I have a membership. So obviously there's a number of decks that I have to get because of my YouTube channel, because of my members, because of my Instagram account and everything. So probably that's more like the to-get list. But my wish list changes I don't mean to say every day, but almost, because I browse a lot. I get to know, I'm almost following all of the creators that I know, and so whenever there's news about something, I would just check it out and put it, add it to my wish list. But then sometimes, there will be a deck that comes out and for whatever reason, I don't necessarily feel like getting it. And so I will remove it from my wish list. So it comes and goes. Let's put it this way. If you could only keep 3 decks, which ones would you choose and why? I don't want to answer this question. There was another, I think it was a tag, a VR that I did recently, and it was even worse. Someone was asking if you could only use one deck. I have approximately 550 decks between Tarot, Oracle, Lenormand, Keeper, you name it. I don't want to have to choose. I honestly don't want to. And it's also because what I'm doing recently with my Members Best videos, I'm going through all of my decks, all of them, literally all of them. And I do the Marie Kondo challenge. So every time that I see a deck, I pick up the deck, I look at it, and I ask myself, have I used this deck in the last 12 months? Is this deck bringing me joy? There's a number of things that I ask myself. So if it's a collectible item, I will not rehome it because I am a collector. So I will keep the collectible items even though I don't use them. But if it is a mass market deck that is still available, I don't use it. It's just there on the shelf, gathering dust. And I know that by giving it to someone who will eventually love this deck, I'm doing a good thing. So I'm actually, I'm reconsidering my bond, my connection with my decks. And so I cannot honestly answer this question. If you could only keep 3 decks, which ones would you choose and why? I'm sorry, but I really cannot. I just can't do it. How does knowing tarot influence your everyday? Every single instant, my life. I don't see tarot. Okay, let me just explain this properly because I think it's a very important concept that I want my subscribers to understand about my personality. Tarot has always been guiding my life. Not in the sense that whenever I had to make a really important decision, I would just pull cards. That would definitely be the case, but it's not just about divination. Tarot for me has always been an instrument to know myself a bit better and a bit better every day. Tarot has always been a tool for me to create bonds. Some of my closest friends I'm friends with them because we have a common passion, which is tarot. I am so grateful to tarot. I have been started when I was very young. And not with tarot because the first tarot deck I bought it when I got it as a present when I was 14. But I started reading divination when I was 6, 7, 8 years old. So having started that young means that almost all of my life I had the possibility to relate to what I know about people and how I see them through tarot. So the fact that many of us, for example, jokingly we say the person is the typical Queen of Wands, it actually means a lot to me, and not in a derogatory way. I would never mean anything negative. It's just that I immediately understand the personality that I have in front of me. And if someone tells me, how would you define that person? I would say she's a Queen of Wands that sometimes has the acuity of mind of a Queen of Swords, but sometimes behaves like a Page of Cups. And we are in the tarot community. I know that that person will understand immediately what I mean. So tarot has been in my life when I was down, when I was blue, because it represented a way for me to pick myself up. It's represented for me a way to process grief and loss. This is something that we've done with my Starland members as well. It's given me the possibility to learn a lot of things about other disciplines such as Kabbalah or also astrology, which is always very interesting, numerology. But it's also given me joy. I mean, there's no two ways around that. I am a collector at heart. And obviously, when I see a deck that is like the Yokai Yochi Tarot, and let me just show you a couple of cards because I really strongly believe in this. When I look at some of these cards, I actually feel my heart leaping because not only because I can read that card and I know what it means, but also because I know the story behind it. For example, this one, this is the Lover's card, and this represents all of the men died at sea. So there was a legend say that obviously there was this yokai that would come and get them, or any other card, the Death card, for example, with all of the spirits that were trapped in a jar. It is a beautiful deck that really gives me very strong feelings, and these feelings are positive. And I'm not even reading the cards. So the rabbit on the moon, for example, this is actually Chinese. It's a tradition or a yokai that has been imported from China. When in China they looked at the moon, they thought they could tell the shape of a rabbit on the moon, and so then they imported that into Japan as well. And so that has become a yokai in the Japanese folklore. So I hope I explained how important this is for me, but I definitely feel like my life could not be separate from tarot because I don't want it to be, and because it's meant so much to me. If you could turn back the time, would you have learned tarot any other way? No, because I was learning and reading in a very safe space, in a very conducive environment, with very intuitive and strong and powerful and loving and caring women in my life, and also because whatever I needed to fine tune on my knowledge, which is still going, I'm still learning, by the way. Whatever I needed to fine tune, I had the possibility to do so because I was learning from other people. And maybe someone that I met one day gave me a different interpretation of a card, and then I've taken that as my own. So I am pretty happy about the way in which I learned tarot. What are your thoughts on the Three of Swords? As we said earlier, it is one of the cards that actually really bothers me in the sense that I understand the classical way to represent it, absolutely. But I do believe that we are talking about the suit of the mind. The suit of swords is represented by the alchemical element of air, which is tied and associated to the mind. So when you look at alchemy and when you look at numerology, you will see that the number 3 is about the growth. So it's after the number 2 that is expressing this sense of leaving individualism behind, opening ourselves up into the world, meeting someone that we feel like we can actually build something with. And the 3 is about that building something together. So I personally would think that that related to the suit of the mind would point to overwhelm, overthinking, if we want to see it that way. But heartbreak is just not, it's something that you get afterwards. Of course, the suit of the mind is never disassociated completely from the heart. But it's not the first thing that I would say. How many decks do you have right now? I don't know the exact number. It is more than 500, less than 600. It's probably around 540, 550. If you could befriend one person on Tarot Tube in Tarot World, who would it be? For sure, Lisa Pappas. I feel that I would love to be friends with her, actual friends. We know each other, but I would love to be friends in the sense that she is an incredibly compassionate person, and I really love that about her. Benabel Wen for sure, because she's just an encyclopedia, and I will be just stoked about having the possibility to have a conversation with her. Simon from the Hermit's Cave, because Simon doesn't know this, but I started watching Simon's video many years ago, and particularly during the pandemic, I felt really blue at times. And sometimes I knew that I was just buying decks, not because I needed them, but because I wanted to make myself feel better. And one day I confided that to Simon, not expecting him, in one of the comments of his video. And I didn't even expect him to answer, because not all tarot tubers answer the comments. Obviously, when you have something like 100 comments in each and every video, it becomes really difficult to answer to each and every person. But he actually did. And he said, this is a safe space and there's no judgment here. And that really made me feel amazing. And I am very grateful for that. So for sure. But then, Mary Kay Greer, oh my goodness, of course. Susan T. Chang, absolutely. But also James R. Eads, for example, because he's an amazing creator. And I would love to see what the process behind the creation is. Or Anna Turian, because I would like to say, you're my favorite illustrator of all times. So there's probably a lot of people that I would love to be friends with in the tarot world. What is your favorite part of the day to do tarot? Any time of the day. I'm lucky enough that I have one room dedicated just to tarot, so I can close myself in and I can just dedicate as much or as little time as I want to. When it comes to content creation, of course, I have to be careful about the light, because, well, you want everything to be visible at least. But when it comes to my personal practice, anytime I need to, it could be at night, it could be in the morning, it could be in the middle of the day, it could be in the middle of the night. So anytime. A confession. Okay, I don't know, because I didn't read all of the questions after the last one. Gee, there's a number of things that people don't know about me. I don't know if I want to confess them though. Let's see, a confession. Sometimes, okay, this one. Just to show you that being a tarot collector, there's a couple of things that no one tells you about tarot collectors. So I hope you're not going to take it the wrong way, but there are times in which I rehome a deck and I buy it again. And then when I look through it, I feel like an idiot, because I'm like, why on earth did I rebuy it? I knew that there was a reason why I rehomed it, and that was the right reason, and it should have stayed, where it was, and I don't know why I rebought it, and so I will rehome it. And in one case, but one case only, but there is one case in which I kept on seeing this deck over and over and over and over again on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, and everyone kept on talking about it, and everyone kept on saying that it's a fantastic deck, and I really felt like I was going through FOMO, and so I bought it for the 3rd time, and I'm not happy about it. I haven't rehomed it yet, it's still here with me, but I don't know what's going to happen to that deck. I don't know if I'm going to keep it. I just feel that that particular deck does not do to me or for me what it does for everyone else. It's probably my fault. So I'm not complaining. It's just most likely my fault. Well, that was it. So that was it for today, and it was a way for you guys to get to know me a little bit better. I am so stoked that you're trusting me and my channel, and it is all thanks to you that my channel is growing. So I am forever grateful. I hope that you will want to consider subscribing or even uh, subscribing to my membership program, because it is something that makes me even happier, because there is even more possibility to interact. Um, but that was it. I would think that I was 100% honest in answering all of these questions. So it will be very interesting to see if someone else is going to pick up this tag. It's actually an older tag. I believe it's from a year ago, but at the time I really had trouble. I had issues showing my face. And now I've kind of gotten over that. I think I'm okay with it. So there we go. In any case, thank you so much for being here, and have a great day. Bye.